My name is Elaine and I'm 45. Widow. It's strange how easily that word rolls off the tongue now, though it used to sting like a fresh wound. My husband, Mark, passed away 6 months ago. A heart attack in the middle of the night, swift and unforgiving. One moment, he was laughing over a silly sitcom rerun, his hand resting on my thigh. The next, I was shaking him, screaming into the dark as if my voice alone could stop time from stealing him. Since then, the house has been too quiet. My son Michael is away at university, a sophomore now, studying computer engineering at a college 2 hours from home. He's growing into himself, still goofy and kind, but more independent than I expected. He calls every few days, sometimes to ask how to cook rice without making it mushy, other times just to hear my voice, though he pretends it's the other way around. He'll be home next week for summer break. I should be excited, and I am. But I'm also anxious. Restless in a way I can't quite put into words. Because here's the thing. Grief doesn't just take the person you love. It takes your rhythm, your identity, in touch. For 20 years, Mark and I had shared everything. Memories, routines, the warmth of bodies pressed together at night. And now I sleep alone. I eat alone. I wake up to an empty pillow and a house that doesn't echo with his laughter. But even in this emptiness, there is desire. Not for anyone in particular, but for the sensation of being touched, seen, wanted. I keep my pink toy in the drawer beside my bed. Quiet secret. It helps in its own artificial way. But it's not the same. It doesn't laugh at my jokes, doesn't whisper my name like Mark used to. Still, it's a salve for the ache. A reminder that my body is still alive even when my heart feels hollow. Sometimes I wonder if it's wrong to feel this way so soon. 6 months. Shouldn't I still be in mourning? But grief doesn't follow a script. Sometimes it leaves space for hunger. And that hunger is hard to ignore when the nights stretch long and silent. I sat on the edge of my bed last night, the drawer still slightly ajar. I hadn't even turned the light on. Just stared into the dimness, the soft hum of the ceiling fan filling the space. I thought about Michael. About how he used to run down the stairs every morning in his pajama pants, asking what was for breakfast before I even opened my eyes. He was always so full of life, so curious. I miss that energy in the house. I wonder how much he's changed. He hasn't been home since Christmas, and even then, the visit felt rushed. Barely a week before he was back on the road. His duffel bag slung over one shoulder, eyes already looking toward his next exam. I wonder if he still sings in the shower when he thinks no one can hear. The more I think about him coming home, the more I find myself preparing. Not just the guest room or the pantry, but myself. I've started wearing perfume again. I tell myself it's to feel normal, to feel human. But deep down I know it's more than that. I want to feel beautiful, desired. There's a strange tension in the air lately. A heaviness that settles in my chest when I walk past the hallway mirror and catch my own reflection. Not just because I'm aging, though the fine lines around my eyes are more visible than ever, but because there's something in my eyes I haven't seen before. Longing. And it frightens me. Because the person I long for isn't a stranger. It's not some faceless man from a dating app or a fantasy spun in the dark. Connection. Familiarity. Someone who knows me. Someone who once relied on me, and now returns a man. Michael. No, that's wrong. But it isn't. I shake the thought away, but it keeps returning, like a tide that doesn't ask permission to rise. Tomorrow I'll change the sheets in his room. I'll make his favorite lemon muffins, the ones I haven't baked since he left. And when he arrives, I'll wrap him in my arms and pretend that everything inside me is calm. That I'm just his mother. That I'm not unraveling. The morning he was due to arrive, I woke early. Too early. The sun hadn't yet crested the hills behind our backyard, but I was already downstairs, moving through the kitchen like a ghost in my own home. The coffee brewed slowly, its familiar aroma unfurling into the silence. I set out 2 mugs instinctively, though he usually slept late on his first day back. I had already baked the muffins. The kitchen counter bore the evidence. Flour dusted across the wooden surface, a mixing bowl in the sink. The warmth of lemon and vanilla lingered in the air, like memory made edible. I stood at the window, cup in hand, and stared out at the driveway. Part of me still expected Mark to pull up in his car, honking once with that little grin he always wore after running errands. The other part, it waited for Michael. And at noon he came. I watched as he climbed out of the cab, taller than I remembered. His dark hair tousled by the breeze. His jeans were snug, a simple t-shirt stretched across broader shoulders than I'd ever seen on him. My breath caught, not just from the sight of him, but from the sudden sharp stab of memory. He had once sat in a high chair in that very kitchen, demanding more blueberries. Now he carried his own bags. When I opened the door, he grinned wide. "Hey, Mom." That voice, deeper now but still warm, washed over me like a wave. I smiled back, trying to contain the rush of emotion threatening to rise up in my throat. "You look good," he said as he hugged me. "Different but good." Different? Yeah, I don't know. Lighter. Glowy almost. It was probably the perfume. Or the sheer adrenaline from seeing him again. I hugged him tighter than I meant to. "You hungry?" I asked, stepping back. "I made your favorite. Lemon muffins." "Of course." He laughed. "You didn't have to do all that, Mom." But I did. I needed something to do with the restlessness that had haunted me all week. As we sat at the table, the distance between us slowly dissolved, as if the months apart had never happened. He devoured the muffins, teased me about how I still folded napkins like I ran a bed and breakfast, and told me about his new roommate, some engineering student who never washed his dishes but could take apart a computer in under 10 minutes. "Sounds like you're surviving," I said with a smile, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Barely. I missed this place." "Missed you?" He looked at me then, and there was something in his gaze that made me pause. Something open and vulnerable, yes, but also curious. Studying me. Later he brought his things upstairs. I followed, hovering in the hallway like some ridiculous ghost, watching as he settled back into his old room. The posters were still there, though faded now. His bookshelf leaned slightly to one side, still cluttered with childhood trophies, worn paperbacks, and a cracked snow globe from some forgotten vacation. "You really didn't touch anything," he murmured, running a hand along the edge of the desk. "I couldn't," I said. "It felt wrong." He turned, that same quiet look in his eyes. "It still feels like home." I nodded and made myself leave before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I sat in my bed, the drawer half open beside me. I didn't reach for it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was distracted. By the sound of water running in the bathroom down the hall. By the image of him in the hallway, brushing past me with that scent of soap and sun still on his skin. By the memory of his fingers brushing mine accidentally over dinner as we both reached for the salt. It was nothing. It was everything. I turned off the lamp and lay back against the pillows, staring into the dark. Sleep didn't come easily. At some point I heard the floorboard creak outside my room. My pulse quickened. I didn't get up. But I didn't close the drawer either. The next morning the air in the house felt different. Not colder, not warmer. Just more alive, as if something had stirred awake in the walls themselves. Michael was already in the kitchen when I came down. His hair damp and tousled from a shower. He was wearing a white t-shirt that clung slightly to his chest, and navy pajama pants that sat low on his hips. He was making scrambled eggs, whistling softly to a tune I didn't recognize. "You're up early," I said, trying to sound casual as I reached for a coffee mug. He turned and grinned. "Jet lag. College kind." I poured my coffee slowly, the way I always do, trying to focus on the warmth seeping through the ceramic and not on how grown he looked standing there. His movement so confident, so adult. He handed me a plate without asking, just like his father used to. I took it, my fingers brushing his. He didn't pull away. "Thanks," I murmured. We ate in quiet ease, the kind that only comes from knowing someone deeply. He told me about his summer plans, some coding internship he might take, a possible trip with friends. I nodded, asked the right questions, but part of me wasn't really listening. Because part of me was remembering last night. A drawer. Pause at the door. The creak of the floorboard outside my room. Had he been there? I shook the thought off, scolding myself internally. He was just my son. My sweet, thoughtful, growing up too fast son. But then, after breakfast we went for a walk like we used to. Down the trail behind the house, where the trees arched overhead like a cathedral of green. The air was still cool, the ground soft under our feet. He walked beside me, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, a quiet smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I missed this," he said. "Me too. You know," he hesitated. "Things felt so different after Dad passed. Like the world kind of shifted." I glanced at him. "They did. I worried about you. Still do sometimes." I tried to smile, but it trembled at the edges. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just hard. Still." "I know. I can tell." He stopped walking and turned toward me. "You've been holding everything together. For me. For you. For the house." I looked away. The breeze brushed my cheek. "But who's holding you?" he asked, voice low. The question landed like a stone in my chest. I didn't answer right away. His eyes searched mine. "You don't have to always be strong, Mom." "I know," I whispered. He reached for my hand. And I let him. That evening we watched a movie together. Something light, nostalgic. He picked it. Said it reminded him of when we used to pile on the couch and eat popcorn until we were too full to move. He sat close, too close maybe, but I didn't ask him to shift. Couldn't. I didn't want to. The room was dim, only the glow of the screen lighting our faces. At one point, his head tilted slightly toward mine. I felt his breath against my shoulder, soft and steady. I didn't move. My heart was pounding, not from fear or confusion, but from recognition. When the credits rolled, I stood up too fast. "I'll head to bed," I said quickly, avoiding his eyes. "Okay," he said softly. But as I reached the stairs, I heard his voice again, quiet but clear. "Night, Mom." And then, "You looked really pretty tonight." I paused, hand gripping the banister. I didn't turn back. I didn't answer. Because my voice wouldn't come. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the moonlight tracing pale silver lines across the room. I had turned off the lamp hours ago, but sleep never came. My thoughts raced, looping, coiling tighter with every passing minute. His voice echoed in my ears. "You looked really pretty tonight." That word, pretty. It had struck something deep inside me, like the soft chime of a bell you didn't know had been waiting to ring. I rolled onto my side, pulled the covers higher, but it didn't help. If anything, the air around me felt warmer. Answer. I could still smell the faint hint of his cologne on the downstairs couch cushion. Still see the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. Still feel the ghost of his breath near my collarbone during the movie. My heart was pounding, a dull, insistent thud in my chest. Had been so long. Too long. There hadn't been a man in my bed in half a year. Not since Mark passed. And before that, even then, intimacy had become rare. Routine. Like brushing teeth or folding laundry. Done out of obligation, not out of fire. But tonight something had stirred. Something raw and buried and unmistakably alive. I bit my lip, restless. The sheets clung to my skin like humidity. My thighs pressed together without thinking. I turned my head toward the nightstand. A drawer called to me. Slowly I sat up, the blankets falling around my hips. The room was silent except for the quiet tick of the wall clock and the soft rustling of the trees outside. I reached for the drawer, my fingers trembling, not from fear, but from a need that had grown unbearable. Opened it. There it was, nestled beside a half-finished journal and an old lavender sachet. My pink toy. My secret. My comfort. I held it in my palm, feeling its familiar shape, the soft hum of memory running through my fingers. I lay back against the pillows, eyes closed, breath shallow. I let it happen slowly, the way you sip something strong, something you know you shouldn't, but can't resist. And then, just as the heat began to build, just as the volcano inside me was breaking through the surface, the door creaked open, froze. The toy slipped from my hand and rolled quietly into the sheets. I couldn't move. My chest tightened as my gaze darted to the doorway. Michael stood there, framed by the soft hallway light. His voice was a whisper, unsure. "Mom!" I yanked the blankets over myself in a rush, heart hammering. I didn't know you were still awake," he said. His eyes wide, face unreadable in the low light. I couldn't sleep," I stammered, my voice raw, breath catching. He didn't move. He stood there, eyes locked with mine, and I knew he saw. Or at least he sensed. The silence between us throbbed. Then he stepped inside. Just 2 paces. Enough to cross the line. "I couldn't sleep either," he said, his voice lower now. I kept thinking about you." My throat dried. I pulled the blanket tighter, but it didn't matter. Everything had already been seen. Not just the drawer or the toy or the heat in my cheeks, but the ache in my eyes. The hunger. I sat up, trying to find words, trying to breathe. "Michael," I whispered. He came closer, slowly, carefully, as if he were approaching something fragile but burning. "I know this is confusing," he said, his voice trembling. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way you looked tonight. The way you smiled." I swallowed hard. My hands clutched the fabric of the blanket like a lifeline. His eyes dropped, just for a moment, to the edge of the sheet where the faint shape of the toy was hidden beneath. And then he looked back at me. "You don't have to be alone, Mom," he said. It was the gentlest thing I'd ever heard. I didn't speak. Because I couldn't. Not yet. Not while my entire body was still on fire. The drawer is still slightly open. The flushed heat rising in my cheeks. The way my chest rose and fell in short, unsteady breaths. Michael didn't move closer, not yet, but his presence was everywhere, heavy in the room like a storm rolling across the ocean. "Mom," he said again, softer now. His voice cracked a little on the word, like he didn't quite trust it anymore. Like he wasn't sure what it meant tonight. "I wasn't trying to interrupt," he said, his gaze flickering, as if he were fighting 1,000 things behind his eyes. "But I heard something. I thought you needed someone." I swallowed hard. My voice, when it came, was barely a breath. "You shouldn't be in here." He nodded. "I know." And still. He didn't leave. The silence wrapped around us like a second skin. There was a weight in his eyes. Not just desire but worry, curiosity, concern. As if he could see through every layer of my fear, every mask I had worn for the past 6 months. "I didn't mean for you to see anything," I whispered. "I didn't mean to look." He took a slow step forward. "But I did." My breath caught. The air between us seemed to hum. "I've been trying not to think about it," he said, the words trembling at the edges. "Not to feel whatever it is I've been feeling. But tonight, something's different. You're different." I looked away. My heart was pounding so loudly I was afraid he might hear it. "You think I haven't noticed how beautiful you look lately?" he asked. "How strong, even when you're hurting?" I squeezed my eyes shut. Couldn't take it. Not the way his words felt like a bomb and a flame at the same time. "I'm your mother," I said, trying to steel myself. But the words rang hollow in the room. They were true, yes, but tonight they didn't explain everything. They did not erase the electricity hanging in the air. They didn't account for the way he looked at me. Not like a boy seeing his mother, but like a man seeing a woman. When I opened my eyes again, he was closer. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off him. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, "or make you feel ashamed. But you don't have to carry all this alone anymore. You don't have to be lonely. See you. All of you." Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. Not just from the danger of the moment, but from the honesty in his voice. The tenderness. I turned my face, but he reached out gently, his fingers just brushing my hand. So soft, so deliberate. That single touch made my whole body tense. Not from fear. From recognition. I pulled my hand back. Still he came closer. His eyes didn't hold judgment or pressure, just a quiet ache that mirrored my own. And then he said, barely more than a whisper, "Let's help each other. We're lonely." The words hovered in the air like a thread between us, fragile and pulsing. I felt them settle deep in my chest, echoing in places I'd kept shut for far too long. Lonely. It was the first time either of us had said it out loud. And maybe that's why it broke me. My heart squeezed, not just from the shock of it, but from how honest it was. Not seductive. Not manipulative. Just real. The kind of real that you bury in silence because speaking it out loud feels like surrender. "I don't know what we're doing," I whispered. "I don't either," he said. "But I know what it's like to feel invisible. I've seen that look in your eyes, Mom. The one I see in the mirror sometimes." I turned away, my shoulders trembling. I wanted to be strong, to be rational, to stop this tide before it pulled us into something we couldn't come back from. But instead, I felt my defenses cracking, slowly, like old glass under pressure. He sat beside me on the bed, not touching, not crowding, just close enough that I could feel his warmth. And we stayed there, both of us staring at the same spot on the wall, breathing the same uncertain air. "I don't want you to feel like you have to carry everything alone," he said softly. Closed my eyes. "Neither should you," I murmured. And in that moment, without thought, without decision, I turned toward him. The space between us evaporated. Our faces were inches apart, our breath mingling in the dim light. I should have stopped. I didn't. Because the ache had been building for too long, and the closeness of him, the safety of him, became too much to resist. I leaned forward. Just enough. Just enough to feel the whisper of his lips brush mine. And then I kissed him. Not deep. Not hurried. Just pressed my lips to his. A touch filled with years of silence, of longing, of loneliness that neither of us had ever put into words. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. When I finally opened my eyes, his hand was resting lightly on mine, and he was staring at me. Not with confusion, but with clarity. I pulled back, my breath shaky, the weight of what had just happened pressing against my chest. "We shouldn't have," I said. "I know." But neither of us moved. And in the silence that followed, there was no fear. Only understanding. Only the echo of something too complex to name.